What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a first look at the PrizePicks board specifically for NBA. So if you're into that sort of thing, this is definitely a video worth watching. The time is about 11:20 a.m. here on the East Coast. It's March 12th, so just keep in mind that the projections you see in today's video are always changing, going up, going down, or just going away, period. So if this is your first time on the channel, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. On this channel, we talk all things single-player daily fantasy sports. Right now, the primary focus is PrizePicks and NBA, but we do dabble in some of the other sites like Monkey Knife Fight, and I've talked about NHL, and we're always looking to expand into other sports. So if that is something that you're into, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. There's about 50% of you that watch these videos that aren't subscribed yet. So if you do watch my videos daily, just double check, make sure that you are subscribed so you're not missing out on any of my content. But without further ado, we've got a medium-sized slate today, 7 games on the docket here. So we're going to go over injury news, and then we're going to start getting into some of these projections and help you identify some good over and under plays on PrizePicks tonight. So starting off at the top of the board here, we've got the Philadelphia 76ers, both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Now, Ben Simmons is considered to be out for Friday, but Joel Embiid is probable to play. So looks like Ben will be out, but we will have Embiid back in the lineup. Good news for us. Now, Bam Adebayo, Miami Heat, he's considered to be out for Friday. Victor Oladipo, Houston Rockets, is doubtful. He's probably going to be rested on a back-to-back. Anthony Davis, Los Angeles Lakers, is going to be out. He continues to be out indefinitely, dealing with a calf injury. DeMar DeRozan, San Antonio Spurs, is going to be out due to personal reasons. John Wall, Houston Rockets, questionable with a left knee contusion. Bradley Beal, Washington Wizards, questionable with knee soreness. Paul Millsap, Denver Nuggets, questionable with a knee. Darius Garland, Cleveland Cavaliers, questionable with a groin injury. Evan Fournier, my Orlando Magic, is doubtful with a groin injury. Daniel House, Houston Rockets, doubtful with a knee. Terrence Ross, Orlando Magic, questionable with a knee. Marc Gasol, Los Angeles Lakers, out due to COVID protocol, so probably more minutes for Montrezl Harrell and company. PJ Tucker, Houston Rockets, sounds like he's going to be exiting the Houston Rockets and finding a new team here soon. Kevin Love, questionable. It would be nice to see Kevin Love get back out on the court. When's the last time we saw him play some basketball? It's been a while. Larry Nance, speaking of coming back for the Cleveland Cavaliers, he is probable to play. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's out in San Antonio. He's probably not going to be with them for much longer. And then finally, Eric Gordon, Houston Rockets, out with a groin. So for Houston, I mean, the big ones that jump out, no Eric Gordon. Sounds like Victor Oladipo is going to be rested, and John Wall is questionable. So they may be very, very short-handed. Not liking the way things are looking for the Houston Rockets. But anyways, enough of the news. We need to start talking some projections. And the first guy that's really standing out to me is Joel Embiid. I mean, he's at 59 fantasy points, which seems like a ridiculous number. Maybe a little bit too high, but we'll find out. Let's start talking some of these projections here. The first game on the board, Philadelphia versus Washington. Philadelphia 119.25, Washington 115.25. So you're talking about a 4-point spread here with a ton of points to be scored on both sides of this game. Now, the fact that Bradley Beal might be rested could be a big bump up for Russell Westbrook. It could also affect the spread here. I think this game has the potential to blow out as it stands, but if Bradley Beal somehow misses this game, well, then you're talking a bigger blowout risk. But let's start looking at some of these guys here. Joel Embiid stands out to me. He's projected at 59. How could you ignore that big number? Well, they've got him at 58.97 over on RotoGrinders. So they both agree that 59 seems to be a good projection on Joel Embiid. Not much of an edge to be had here, but that's a big number. Let's just see real quick in his recent game logs how many times he's been able to hit this huge total. All right, so if we go back to 5 games here like we typically do, 35.4 puts him well under, 48.8 well under, 72.6 huge game there, 48.1 and a 74.3. So guys, obviously he's got 70-point upside shoot. He's even got a game where he drops 93.9 fantasy points. So yeah, he could definitely get there, but it's been difficult. In his last 5 games, he's went under 59 in 3 of those and over in just 2. But we have to keep in mind that Ben Simmons will not be in the lineup, so things could be boosted here for Joel Embiid in terms of his usage, his fantasy points per minute. Just when you think a guy couldn't do any more on a basketball court, well, maybe Joel Embiid does tonight. Let's see who else is standing out here. I mentioned Russell Westbrook, and I think he's in a good spot tonight, especially if Bradley Beal sits. As it stands, though, let's say Beal is in the lineup. Russell Westbrook, 52 fantasy points on PrizePicks. He's at 47.92 over on RotoGrinders. So they like the under on RotoGrinders as of right now, but of course, things will change quite a bit if Bradley Beal is truly ruled out. But the reason I like this matchup for Westbrook, he is a combo guard, and combo guards against the 76ers have feasted. They are averaging 53.15 fantasy points per game allowed to combo guards like Russell Westbrook. Now you combine that with the fact that Russell Westbrook's been playing some pretty good basketball lately, and this makes for a good spot here for Russ to dominate. Now, we'll go back to his 5th game. You can see he scores 54.8 fantasy points against Minnesota, so that's good for an over. Drops back down here to 44 for an under, 53.7 over, 65.3 over, and then 46 against Memphis the other night. Good number, but not good enough to top 52. So in his last 5 games, he's got 3 overs, 2 unders. But if Beal is out, once again, I mean, his usage, his fantasy points per minute, all that stuff will be on the rise unless it turns into a blowout. Then that does kind of worry me for full game formats. But liking the way things are shaping up for Russell Westbrook. Another guy that stands out to me is Tobias Harris. We took Tobias Harris in last night's slate in real life points, and he ended up pulling through. If you got him at 23.5 points, he went over that. So you probably did well with that pick. Now today he's projected at 41 fantasy points. So if we're talking fantasy points, they've got him at 40.68 on RotoGrinders. So somewhere between 40 and 41 seems appropriate for Tobias Harris. Not seeing a huge edge for us here, but versatile forwards against this Washington Wizards team have done pretty well here. Wizards are allowing over 33 fantasy points per game to players like Tobias Harris. So let's look at his last 5 games real quick, and he's got some good ones in there. Now we got to go back a ways, all the way back here to February 21st. So he had 34.3 in that one, putting him under. 46.9 though puts him over. 14.4, not good enough for the over there. Then he misses 2 games in a row, comes back against Utah, drops 43. That's good for an over. And then 32.6 against Chicago last night. Played just 25 minutes in that one, so not a very good performance, but he did get it done in terms of real life points, dropping 24. Just enough to get us over the hump. So I do like Tobias Harris with Ben Simmons being out. I think that having Joel Embiid back in the lineup is going to only help Tobias Harris, take some of the pressure off. You know, Tobias Harris is a good player, but he's never been a lead guy. He's never been that number 1 option. I know I saw him as a younger player in the Orlando Magic organization, and, he's a good second, third fiddle guy, but never truly the top guy on any team. So having Embiid tonight, I think will take some pressure off of Harris and open up some things for his game tonight. So I do like Tobias Harris to potentially go over as long as this game stays close throughout. But enough of this game. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. We've got the likes of Colin Sexton, Jared Allen, Darius Garland for Cleveland. Then on the flip side, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram. By the way, I liked Brandon Ingram to go over real life points last night. He had a terrible game. And then Lonzo Ball for the New Orleans side of things. So let's look at this game total real quick. We got New Orleans at home, 118. They're a 7-point favorite against this Cavaliers squad. So yeah, I would have to put this in an orange category for me in terms of blowout risk or blowout potential. This is a back-to-back for New Orleans. So NBA not wasting any time putting these teams in these back-to-back situations post All-Star break. Let's take a look at some of these guys here and see who is jumping off the page. So first thing that stands out to me is both Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, who RotoGrinders classify as combo guards. They're in a very good spot here against this Pelican squad. Pelicans allowing nearly 50 fantasy points per game to combo guards. Now, the guy that I'm probably leaning more toward would be Colin Sexton. With Darius Garland being questionable tonight, if he does not play, Colin Sexton will soak up a ton of usage and a ton of fantasy point per minute numbers there. So already, as you can see out of these two guys, Sexton does have the higher fantasy point per minute average at 0.96. That's 0.10 or 0.10 more fantasy points per minute than Garland. Plus, his usage rating is about 3 points higher at 27.68. So that number will only grow if Darius Garland does sit out. So Colin Sexton projected at 38 on PrizePicks today. If we go over to his recent game logs, take a look at how he's done in his last 5, you can see he's got some monster performances. So going back to the 5th game here, 34.7, pretty strong, but not strong enough to go over 38. So that'd be an under. 31.9 under, but then he's got 3 in a row where he has just went off, and he's went up and up and up 3 games straight. So 43.5 puts him well over tonight's projection of 38. 54.6 puts him well over that, and 54.8 of course tops that. So in his last 5 games, he's went over 3 times, under just 2. Playing very good basketball here. No previous game logs against New Orleans to look at, but yeah, if you're leaning one way or the other here on an over or under on Colin Sexton, well, if Darius Garland's out, I do like the way things are setting up here for a Colin Sexton over. So that's probably the way that I'd be leaning on him. The next guy we're going to talk about is Zion Williamson. He's projected at 44. They've got him at 42.63. So you figure somewhere between 42.5 and 44 points is appropriate for Zion. Now, the big question is, how much upside is there for Zion in this matchup? Well, Cleveland, they've allowed 32.39 fantasy points per game to forwards like Zion Williamson. And I don't know if there's anybody who's really like Zion Williamson, but yeah, he is a special player indeed. So we go back here to February 25th. He puts up 53.6 fantasy points. That puts him well over tonight's projection of 44. Another over here, under, over, and he misses a game. This is against Team LeBron. We don't count that. That's his all-star game. And then Minnesota last night, he only puts up 30 fantasy points. So kind of a weird output there for him. They got blown out. They were supposed to come out and do the blowing out against Minnesota, but instead they ended up being the victims of a blowout. So I expect this New Orleans Pelicans team to look to bounce back tonight and beat up on this Cavaliers squad and in a bounce back game. So I do like Zion Williamson here. I don't think there's really anybody on Cleveland who's going to match up with this guy and be able to slow him down, especially at the rate that he's been playing lately. So liking the over on Big Z in this situation here. Moving on, we got Jared Allen at 38. He's at 36.56. This is a tough matchup for him against Steven Adams. So I'd be a little careful here when trying to take an over on Jared Allen. We'll take a peek into his game logs, though, and see how many times he's been going over this 38 in recent memory. And you can see, he had a little hot streak here going back to the middle or end of February. But in his last 5 games, guys, he's been struggling to hit this over on 38 in his last 3. So he's got an over on game 5, big over on game 4, but then he's got 3 in a row where he's just barely topped 30 fantasy points. So again, you consider what he's done in his last 3 games. You consider the matchup tonight against Steven Adams, and I'd probably lean toward taking the under on Jared Allen. This could be a tough game for him. Otherwise, yeah, not anybody else that's really jumping out at me in terms of overs. Brandon Ingram, he's at 40. I mentioned last night he struggled. Maybe he gets back on track tonight, but it looks like Cleveland does a pretty good job at limiting scoring wings in terms of fantasy points per game. They're allowing just over 21 fantasy points per game to scoring wings, so wouldn't be too overly optimistic at Brandon Ingram going over tonight. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for everything that I'm seeing here in this game. We can go ahead and move on here and start talking about the next one. And that next game is a pretty good one here on paper, at least. We've got the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic. The first time we'll see Jokic since All-Star break. He's projected at 56 tonight, so that's a big number. You also got Jamal Murray on the board at 36, Michael Porter Jr. at 30. And then on the Memphis side of things, we've got Ja Morant at 38, Jonas Valanciunas, Dylan Brooks. Now, Jonas Valanciunas, he was a heavy favorite to go under the other night. He was a guy that just absolutely smashed. He came out looking like Wilt Chamberlain Valanciunas or something, but we'll see if he can do that tonight against a much more formidable opponent in Nikola Jokic tonight. Now, thing that's standing out to me is the game totals here. So you're looking at over 227 real life points combined when you take the totals from each side of this game. So I like the way that things are setting up here in terms of some fantasy upside here. I think that there's a chance that some of these guys just absolutely erupt for big games. So we start talking about the players that I'm liking here in terms of overs. Well, you've got Ja Morant at 38. He's projected at 38.02 over on Roto Grinder, so we call that a slight over. But what's really standing out to me is the fact that this Denver Nuggets squad is allowing over 43 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Ja Morant. So this is a plus matchup for Ja, and I think that there's a chance that he can go over 38 here. But let's look at his recent game logs and see how he has been performing lately. All right, so we dial it back to his fifth game. He's got 36.3 in that one. That's an under. 24.7, obviously an under. But then he comes back here strong in his last three games, 55, 48, and 41. So it seems like he's been kicking it into a different gear in his last three, easily topping 38 fantasy points. So he's gone over in his last three. He went under in his previous two. So he's got 3 overs, 2 unders for you guys keeping track at home. Now tonight against Denver, I've already talked about what a good matchup this is. Ja, 1.17 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of over 30. He's been playing pretty good basketball here. So if I'm leaning any direction on this one, I'd probably take the over here as the game does have pretty healthy totals and the spread looks to stay close and competitive. So liking the way that one's shaping up for an over on Ja Morant. Jamal Murray's another guy who is projected at 36 tonight. He's at 36.05 on Roto Grinders. So kind of hand in hand here in terms of the projection. Both sides agree that 36 seems appropriate. Now, combo guards against Memphis have done very well this season. Memphis allowing over 42 fantasy points per game, almost 43 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Jamal Murray. So let's look at his last 5 games and see what he's been up to. You can see if we go back here against Washington, 51.2 puts him well over 36. He comes up short in his next 2 games going under. Then he comes back with a strong performance at 41.6. And then he falls just short against Indiana at just 34.4. So in his last 5 guys, he's got 5 games, or I'm sorry, in his last 5, he's got 3 games where he's went over, 2 games where he's went under. Am I doing that right? 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, I take that back. In his last 5 games, he's gone over twice and under 3 times. My bad. In his last 6, he's went over 3 times and under 3 times. So it's been kind of an up or down last few games. That's the point here for Jamal Murray. But like I said, working in his favor is this matchup against Memphis. Memphis has been very giving to combo guards, so I like the way things are shaping up. Jamal Murray overall been playing a lot better basketball in his last several games, so I'm leaning toward the over on Jamal Murray. Let's see who else is out here. Jonas Valanciunas, I mentioned him having a big game the other night. He's at 34 tonight. 34.63 on Roto Grinders. Post-up bigs been held in check for the most part by Nikola Jokic and this front court, but got to figure that, Paul Millsap, he'll be out. So, if it's solely on the shoulders of Nikola Jokic here to slow down Valanciunas, I don't know. Maybe he struggles a little bit. Let's look at his last 5 for Joe Val and see what he's been up to. So he's gone over here against the Clippers at 42.7, falls way under at 11.2. Then he goes under, and then just goes off against Washington the other night for 67.5 fantasy points. Look, I don't think anybody saw that one coming. That is definitely an anomaly, an outlier, if there ever was one. So do not hang your hat on that and think that Jonas Valanciunas is going to do 60-plus fantasy points any given night. But he is a pretty good fantasy performer when he's out there. 1.27 fantasy points per minute. And his usage for a post-up big is actually very high at 23.78. So there is some merit here to taking Jonas Valanciunas over. I probably will just avoid him. I think he's kind of a tough guy to figure out on a game-to-game basis. And this matchup doesn't look like one that he is going to flourish in. I think he's going to have his hands full with Joker on the other side of this thing. So, speaking of Joker, he's at 56 on PrizePicks, 55.39 over on Roto Grinders. They got him slightly under the 56. Let's just look into his game logs real quick and see what he's been up to. His last 5 games, 55.7, barely under there. 57.7, barely over. 77.3, well over tonight's projection. It's 69.5, puts him well over. And then he falls short against Indiana at just 39.4. So in his last 5 games, guys, he's got 3 where he's went over 56 and 2 where he's went under 56. So not Jonas Valanciunas, but Nikola Jokic, the Joker. I do like the way that this one is taking shape for him. He can get his fantasy points in so many different ways. He's not just a guy who's going to score. He's an assist guy. He's a rebound guy. And I mean, he chips in some steals and blocks too once in a while as well. So I like Nikola Jokic tonight. In terms of anybody who might be in a very negative situation where an under might be in play, Dillon Brooks, he might fit that situation. He's at 26 on PrizePicks. They got him at just 23.6 on Roto Grinders. So I'm liking the under on Dillon Brooks. This Denver Nuggets team allowing just 21 fantasy points per game to scoring wings like Brooks. So I think taking the under on Brooks could make a little bit of sense there. But enough of this game. Let's move on to the next one. And in the next game, we've got the Orlando Magic versus the San Antonio Spurs. So we've already mentioned at the top of the show that DeMar DeRozan likely to be out tonight due to personal reasons. Of course, the Orlando Magic continue to deal with a plethora of different injuries. Terrence Ross expected to be out tonight. Evan Fournier expected to probably be out tonight. It's really just the Nikola Vucevic show. Maybe you play a little bit of Michael Carter-Williams. He's been playing pretty good in an increased role since coming back from injury. So, yeah, we'll have to take a look here and see what things are looking like. And we'll start things off by looking at the game totals and spreads. San Antonio 111, Orlando 104.5. So even without DeRozan, San Antonio still a pretty sizable favorite at home tonight. Looking down the line here, I did mention Carter Williams. Let's talk about him real quick because he's in a favorable situation tonight against this Spurs backcourt. So his projection's at 28 on PrizePicks. He's at 26.96. Let's call it 27. So between 27, 28 fantasy points seems appropriate for MCW. But let's look at his game logs and see what he's been up to in his last 5. So going back to February 25th, 16.5. 16.9, so 2 unders, but you could see his minutes were pretty low, capped at about 25 minutes there. Now, in his last few games here, the last 3, 29 minutes, 34 minutes, and 29 minutes, his fantasy production has gone way up, 37, 44, and 29. So he's easily went over in his last 3 games, going under just 2 times in his last 5. So this is a good spot, like I mentioned, for Carter Williams. They call him a combo guard. I call him more of a like pass first or distributor type, but I guess we can go with combo guard. But anyway, San Antonio giving up over 58 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So Carter Williams, to say he is in a plus matchup here, yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I love the way things are shaping up here for Carter Williams with Orlando being so shorthanded. And they're going to need to lean on this guy and, try and get the most out of him that they can. So decent situation to take an over on Carter Williams, in my opinion. And on the San Antonio side, I already told you DeMar DeRozan's going to be out tonight. So DeJounte Murray is my number 1 candidate to take a step up, to jump into a bigger role here for the Spurs. He's at 41. Now, the good news for Murray is that the Orlando Magic suck in terms of guarding opposing combo guards or guards in general. So I think this is a great spot for DeJounte Murray to bounce back. And let's look at his game logs here and see how he's done in his last few. Now, they're mostly good, but there are definitely some duds in here. So go back to his 5th game, 47.7. He's got 36.2, 41.2, 33, and 24. So he's went over 41 in just 2 games out of his last 5. But, with DeRozan out of the lineup, Murray's going to take on a much bigger role. Now, if we go back even further than 5 games, you could see that he's got 52.8, 55.4. So some big performances in there. Now, I don't know if you guys caught that, but Dwayne Bacon wasn't on the board a minute ago. Dwayne Bacon just popped up out of nowhere on my screen. That was kind of spooky, kind of scary, but looks like they're adding some more Orlando Magic players here to the board. Dwayne Bacon, we're not going to talk about him, but that's another guy that you can look toward playing tonight if you're absolutely desperate. Vucevic, I think he's in another good spot tonight. They've got him projected at 50. That is a big number. He's at 47 over on Roto Grinders, but like I said last night, in some situations, you just have to put all the numbers aside and just think about, all right, it's Nikola Vucevic versus last night it was Kelly Olynyk. Is he really going to stop Vucevic? No, he's probably not. Same thing goes for tonight. Jakob Poeltl, is he going to be able to slow down Nikola Vucevic? No, I just don't think he will be able to. I think Vooch is just too good of a player and is too involved for this Magic squad to let a guy like Poeltl stop him. So I do like Vucevic here. 50, maybe that's a little too rich, but I do think Vooch has a very good game in this one. Anybody else worth talking about? Maybe some guys in an under situation. Terrence Ross, I don't know why he's on the board. It looks like he's going to be ruled out tonight. Yeah, I mean, they've got Poeltl at 32 over on PrizePicks. He's at 28 on Roto Grinders. Maybe you take the under on him. He had a string of games where he was playing very well. His last couple have not been so hot. So maybe taking the under on Poeltl is a way to go. But yeah, I think overall that pretty much covers it for this game. You get the idea here. Now this one's super interesting to me. The Chicago Bulls taking on the Miami Heat. And we mentioned that Kelly Olynyk was getting balled up last night by Nikola Vucevic. Well, tonight he's got an easier matchup against Wendell Carter Jr., but the one that I'm most interested in is seeing how Jimmy Butler and Zach LaVine do against one another here. So let's go ahead and start breaking this one down. We've got Chicago as the home team, 109.75. They're 2-point underdogs against Miami. Miami expected to score 111.75. So in terms of game total, not very high here. You're looking at about 220, 221 points. I wish it was higher. Leads me to lean toward the under on a lot of these role players. Still, you could target the main guys like the Jimmy Butlers, the Zach LaVines in over situations in games like this. But let's start taking a look here and seeing who is standing out. The first guy that I'm going to talk about is going to be Coby White, who is projected at 28. They got him at 28.3 over on Roto Grinders, so they're leaning toward an over for Coby White. Now, the reason Coby White stands out is the fact that combo guards against Miami have feasted. Miami allowing over 51 fantasy points per game to combo guards, and Coby White has been playing better basketball lately. So let's dig into his game logs real quick. All right, so as you can see in his last 5 games, he's got an over, a push, an over, and then he falls just short in his last one against Philly, but he only played 24 minutes in that one. That was last night, as a matter of fact. So maybe Chicago benched him a little early, give him some rest, knowing that they would be on a back-to-back and probably need him at full strength against this Miami Heat squad tonight. So liking the way this situation is shaping up here for Coby White. Didn't play a ton of minutes last night. Coming off of the All-Star break, he should be nice and fresh and ready to go tonight. So I already mentioned, love the matchup. He's playing over 33 minutes per game and playing much better basketball lately. So I do like the over for Coby White. Tyler Herro is another guy that you can potentially take the over on. No Bam Adebayo last night. Let's see how Tyler Herro fared. He didn't fail. He fared well, actually. So in his last 5 games, 13.3. He misses 3 games in a row, comes back 21.4, 27.5, 5.9, and then 31.3 last night. So last night was definitely the way to go against the Orlando Magic. He's went over actually in his last 5 games, just twice though, and went under 3 times. I think I took him under in a first half format, and that backfired on me. Did not end up working out, but the reason Tyler Hero makes some sense tonight is because combo guards against this against the Chicago Bulls team, Chicago allowing over 44 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So if Tyler Hero gets the same minutes run that he got last night, where he came real close to 30 minutes, played over 28 minutes, then I do like Tyler Hero to hit the over, especially in a game where it's expected to stay close. No Bam Adebayo. They're going to need him to play well. So liking that one. Let's see who else stands out as a potential over here. Kelly Olynyk. Not super excited to click Kelly Olynyk's name, but he's at 27 today on PrizePicks. They got him at 30.61 over on RotoGrinders, and it's a plus DVA matchup, meaning that the Chicago Bulls allow more fantasy points per game than he's projected to score tonight. So I think that there's room for some upside here, for some ceiling type of game here for Kelly Olynyk. So liking the over on him. Anybody else standing out? Jimmy Butler, he's kind of in a negative DVA situation here, but of course, Butler, super talented, very good player. He is matchup proof, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. Wendell Carter, he's at 25 on PrizePicks, 24.4 on RotoGrinders, in a bit of a negative DVA spot here, so the matchup not looking to be super easy for him. Probably seeing a lot of Kelly Olynyk tonight. In terms of anybody else on the board that might go under, well, Zach LaVine, it's hard to root against the guy because he is a talented player, but they've got him at 41 on PrizePicks. He's not even at 40 on RotoGrinders, so the under looking like the way to potentially go here. Miami has done a good job at putting the clamps on opposing scoring wings like LaVine, allowing under 19 fantasy points per game on average. So the under could be the way to go on Zach LaVine, but of course, it's going to take some guts to click that under on a guy who's as good as Zach LaVine is. So without further ado, let's move on to the next game here, and it looks like it's going to be the Houston Rockets versus the Utah Jazz. Now, I've already mentioned at the top of this video that Houston is going to be very shorthanded. Even if they were at full strength, I still think Utah wins this game pretty easily, but we're not going to waste any time talking John Wall because it looks like he's going to be out tonight. Leaving Jayshawn Tate, Kevin Porter Jr., who just got signed from the G League. He's back in the NBA now. Very talented player, had some great games in his young career while he was a part of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So tonight, back in the NBA, and he might be in a good spot here. We'll see. But as far as guys on the Utah side of things, we got to talk Donovan Mitchell. He's projected at 40. They got him at 44. We're going to call it 44 on RotoGrinders. So that's a 4-point over, guys. He is a combo guard, and the Houston Rockets have allowed over 58 fantasy points per game to combo guards. That means they're the number one most generous, most giving team in the entire NBA to opposing combo guards. So you got to love the matchup here for Donovan Spider Mitchell. All right, in his last 5 games, he's went over 40 in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5. Very good success rate at hitting the over on 40 fantasy points. I think there's a good chance that he does it again tonight, depending on how many minutes he gets. Because of this game spread being so high, I mean, there is definitely a chance here for a blowout. If you haven't noticed, this is a red zone game for me. In terms of blowout risk, I give it a red. Very, very high chance, very probable that this game will blow out. It might even be a blowout by halftime, guys. So got to be careful with Donovan Mitchell. I'd probably stick to playing him in a first half only format. And of course, clicking the over on him based on the way things are shaping up. So who else? Anybody else standing out here? Rudy Gobert. I mean, this could be a situation where Rudy Gobert has a big game. He's projected at 41 on PrizePicks, 43.8 over on RotoGrinders. This is just one of those situations, again, where you start thinking about the Houston Rockets and their roster, and you're like, well, they don't really have any good big men to stop someone like Rudy Gobert. We've seen guys who fit the post-up big archetype like Jared Allen have big games against Houston. So I think Rudy Gobert, better than Jared Allen in terms of a player talent-wise. There's definitely an upside here for Rudy Gobert to have a huge game. Again, would probably just touch him here in the first half only and not take him in a full game format. So liking the over on Rudy Gobert, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, some of these other guys are going to be more difficult to figure out. Jayshawn Tate, we mentioned. Kevin Porter, of course, we mentioned. Both of them in negative DVA situations, but both of them young guys. So even if the game does get out of hand and blow out, I still think that these guys get a ton of run here, especially with the Rockets being so depleted. You could see Kevin Porter's projected at 34 minutes tonight. Jayshawn Tate also projected at 34 minutes tonight. So no matter what happens in this game, whether it be close, whether it be a blowout, I think these dudes both play a ton of minutes. Now they got Porter at 29.5. They got him at 30.5 on Roto Grinders, so the over looking like the way to go. And if Kevin Porter plays big minutes and sees a lot of the second string guys for Utah, then maybe he ends up having a pretty good game. Jayshawn Tate, the other guy we talked about, he's at 26. They've got him at 26.56, 26.5 over on Roto Grinders. So taking the over on him also could be a way to go. So that's going to do it for this game. It's just very ugly on the Houston side tonight, guys. I don't know who's going to be in, who's going to be out, but it looks like Houston, no matter what happens, is going to be pretty short-handed, and they're going to get absolutely smoked here by this Utah Jazz team. So on to the next game, and it is the last game, the final game on the board tonight. We've got the Indiana Pacers taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. We've got the likes of Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon. They've even given us Miles Turner, TJ McConnell, and Justin Holiday. They're just packing the board full of these role players tonight. Then on the Los Angeles Lakers side of things, LeBron James, Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell. Of course, I talked about no Marc Gasol for the Lakers, so Harrell will probably be playing a bigger role. Kyle Kuzma and THT, not THC for all of you smokers out there, but THT, Talen Horton Tucker. All right, so let's look at this game real quick. We've got the Lakers at 110.5 versus Indiana at 106. This game, in terms of totals, not very exciting here. These teams are looking to combine for about 216 to 217 points. Pretty low scoring game. So let's see what's sticking out to me in terms of overs, as we typically do here. First guy that I feel confident in is Dennis Schroeder, who's been playing, I would say, better basketball since Anthony Davis has been out. He's projected at 28 on PrizePicks, 27.78 on Roto Grinders. So both sites agree 27 to 28 points seems to be the window here for Dennis Schroeder. Let's look at his game logs, though. All right, so if we go back to his fifth game, which is all the way back on February 16th, 42.7 points puts him well over tonight's projection of 28. Then he misses 4 games, but he comes back. 29.6 puts him over. Falls short here at 23.6, but comes up clutch, 29.6 and 45.7. So in his last 5 games, guys, it's hard to ignore this. He's went over 4 times and under just once. So the over being the way to go here recently on Dennis Schroeder. I told you, he's been playing some better basketball lately. Now, what stands out to me and why I would lean toward taking the over on Schroeder is the fact that this Indiana Pacers team is so giving to opposing combo guards, allowing almost 53 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Dennis Schroeder. On top of that, he's got a pretty decent fantasy points per minute, 0.86. It's not elite by any means, but it's okay, and it should be on the rise. And his usage should be up too at just 22.48. Both of those numbers are going up since Anthony Davis has been out. So I do like Dennis Schroeder, and I like him to go over in this spot here. Anybody else standing out? Well, we got to talk Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon, he's been one of those guys that's been very unpredictable, very difficult to figure out. They got him at 37 on PrizePicks today, 34.94. Let's call it 35 on Roto Grinders. Let's see how Brogdon's been doing in his last few, because it's been a seesaw. It's been up and down here. So we go back to his 5th game against the Warriors, 31.1, puts him under by quite a bit. 27.2, well under. Against the Knicks here, he misses that game, comes back, 30.8 under, 39.3 over, and then just 19.2 against the Denver Nuggets, playing over 33.5 minutes. So terrible terrible string of games here in his last 5. He's gone under tonight's projection of 37 in 4 out of 5 games. So Brogdon, super talented, but I know he was dealing with some little nagging injuries. Maybe that was slowing him down. Maybe the All-Star break has given him time to rest up, heal up, and hopefully we get a better version of Malcolm Brogdon out there tonight, because the matchup looks like a good one. Combo guards against the Lakers have scored over 46 fantasy points per game, so I'm loving this in terms of upside potential here for Brogdon. He's getting plenty of minutes, almost 36 minutes a night, 1.07 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of over 26. So I like the way things are shaping up for Brogdon to go over. Let's see if there's anybody else that stands out for a good overplay. Well, Kyle Kuzma, potentially a over candidate. He's at 24 fantasy points on PrizePicks, 23 on Roto Grinders. So we could potentially go here in terms of taking the over. Let's just see how he's been doing here in his last few. If we go back to his 5th game, 32.2 over. Then he goes under, over, misses a game, comes back with a strong over against Sacramento at 45.1. So he's went over in his last 5, 3 times, under 2 times. Not too shabby. The matchup here is a pretty good one too. Versatile forwards are getting over 30 fantasy points per game against this Indiana Pacers squad. So I think that there is some definite upside and potential here for Kuzma to eclipse 24 fantasy points. Otherwise, LeBron is LeBron. Nothing really more to say about that. Matchup proof. Not really going to dig in too deep on him. He's going to do what he does. Miles Turner versus Montrezl Harrell. Miles Turner's been playing some better basketball lately. He might be a candidate to potentially take on an over here. Let's look at his game logs and see what he's been up to. In his last 5, he went over, fell short 3 games in a row, and then went over in his last game, which was against Denver. So 2 big overs and 3 unders in his last 5 game logs. So, yeah, he's been kind of tricky to figure out. Maybe he's just a fade in this situation. Not seeing a clear trend one way or the other here. Anybody else jumping off here? You got some guys who are in potentially negative game script or negative matchups. You got Justin Holiday. He's at 23. Shooting wings like Justin Holiday have been held to just 19 fantasy points. Montrezl Harrell against Turner. This is going to be a tough one, I think, for Harrell tonight. They like him to go over slightly by like 1 or 1.5 points. So, I don't know, man. It's just ugly. They got a lot of these role players up, and I don't like playing role players because it's very hard to get a clear read on what they've done in the past, what they're going to do tonight. I mean, you got some situations here, at least on the Lakers side, where you're not sure who's going to step up in the absence of Marc Gasol, Anthony Davis. So, probably just not going to play any of these guys, to be honest. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. 7-game slate tonight. NBA getting back into the swing of things. Definitely like this video if you've gained anything from it, any value here. I appreciate all the likes. I haven't had over 30 likes in a video for like my last 6 videos. Let's see if we can go over 30 likes on today's video. That's my challenge to you. This has been CJ for Out of Bounds DFS. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and good luck tonight. Let's get back on track and start winning some money on PrizePicks. Peace.